After these panel discussions, we're going to have a Hive experience, which is a curated networking experience to connect you with other professionals here, which is another one of the things that CoLab is bringing to this and making this particularly good and connective of a conference, because it's about being connected with each other and creating this together more so than it is, how do I fit in this box? You get to make the box. So we'll make it together. So it looks like we've got who we've got, so let's go ahead and get started. You already know this gentleman right here from my introduction earlier, the mayor of Frackville. How about a big hand for John and his panelists who he's about to introduce to you?
Thank you all. Thank you, Jason. Jason, the Frac 2023 voice of God. If anybody is between here and the elevator and chit-chatting, please come over. You're not going to hurt anybody's feelings by coming in a few seconds late. That's totally okay. So come on over. Thank you, everybody. I just noticed that this is happening, and it's important what we're going to talk about today. But at the same time, there's a clinic on fractional biz dev. It's freaking hard to beat, man. So you guys are making the macro decision today. People upstairs are doing tactical things. So, well, thank you, everybody. I'm super excited about this. I've got good notes because I realize I can't remember everything I need to say. So I got to write down notes. But this is a panel I've been looking forward to for a long time because I've been friends with these folks here for quite some time, and we've been spinning around in this fractional soup for several years, and I'm like, yeah, someday we're going to get together, and here we are, and we're going to talk about it. So I'm going to do some introductions here because that's my job. And so with me today, we're going to talk about fractional as a career choice. Why? Socially, why are people going fractional? Why are companies hiring fractional? What does it mean culturally? Like, there's a lot of dynamics here that are bigger than all of us. And these fine folks have some perspectives on that. So in the middle, well, kind of in the middle, is Karina Mickley. Yep. So Karina is the visionary behind Fractionals United, and if you haven't found it, please find it. It's a wonderful community for fractional pros. There's only a few on this planet that are all about the give and all about the support, and Fractionals United is one. And quite honestly, a lot of what we do in our community at Voyagers U, I'm like, yeah, just do what Karina's doing. It's great. But it's because we're aligned on values, just teach and help. So Karina's going to bring what she's been doing. She's worked her life as a fractional COO. So it's a very unique perspective. So if that's you and you have that viewpoint, comes at it from the operations lens. In fact, what does it say on your wrist? You have a bracelet. Does it say operations?
It says optimize.
Optimize on her wrist. So that's awesome. I've got a necklace with a picture of a fish. So Karina's going to share her viewpoint. Thank you, Karina. Also with us is Brett Trainer, Fractional Pro podcast host. If I were to categorize Brett, he's definitely a fractional thinker, but you've done a good job of like the exodus, like corporate escapee. The corporate escapee, if you want to think about like what that escape looks like, what are the dimensions, so much of that. 4 years ago, he grabbed onto like there's something to the corporate escape that begs attention and study, and there's stuff there, and you decided to make it a calling. And it's a beautiful thing. So thank you, Brett, for being here. And finally, Heather Polivka, who is from the Twin Cities. So these two are from Chicago and New York, and Heather's from here. And Heather and I go back a couple of years as well. And Heather is the voice and brain and power behind, I just say awesome people leaders. Yeah. And she and I we have good conversations, and leadership tomorrow doesn't look like what it looks like today, doesn't look at all like it looks yesterday. We've all left the building. We're not going back, even though Wall Street is saying go back. Like, leadership is just in the center of our lives right now, and very grateful because Heather knows leadership quite well. She teaches it, coaches it, educates on it, practices it, and has a very unique lens. And obviously, fractional matters through the leadership lens and the people lens. So thank you all. This is going to be good. So thank you for offering your head. Okay, so Q&A. Hi, Tim. That's okay. You can be late, jerk. Just kidding. One of my best friends, and he's late. He's heard this before. Okay, I'm going to start with you, Brett.
Yes.
Okay, so I want to start with the idea of corporate escape. So according to CNBC last year, 50 million people quit their jobs, said, I'm out, that's it, I quit. I recently learned of a thing called quit talks. People just using TikTok to say screw you and publicly doing TikToks about it. But this is kind of your territory. People are leaving and not going back. Why the exodus? Why the need to escape? And where to escape to? And I'd love for you guys to throw in on this too. Yeah, but I'll start with you, Brett.
Yeah, and I will, you can cut me off if I start rambling too long.
That's okay, ramble away.
And I would not advise the quit talk either. Keep it professional. Even every ounce of your body says, I just want to say screw you and leave. It's not in the best effort. So as John said, I left about 4 years ago. So I was in corporate, used to say 20 years, it was 30 years. And at the tail end of that, I left corporate and went into management consulting because that's really what you want to do at the end of your career. But at that point I was trying, I can change the world. Digital transformation is coming. All these companies just don't see it, right? They're built in silos. They can be so much more efficient. Well, after a year and a half in management consulting, screaming from the mountaintops, getting nothing done, an army of one. By the way, I was tasked with both business development and with delivery. So I'm like, all right, so I'm sourcing clients, I'm selling clients, and then I'm on the delivery side, but yet I'm only getting 50% of what my billable rate is. I'm like, something seems off here. So that was my jumping point to get off. But since then, I've just made it, I left because I thought money, right? I want to replace my income. I think I can make more income. Flexibility, freedom would be nice, but man, 3 years into it, now into 4, I'm finding it's the balance, right? It's all the different pieces of it. I'm in control of it. You still have to work. I had to rewire my brain how to work, right? Because for 30 years, you're following somebody else's schedule. You may get 20 to 30% of your time to do something on your own, but all of a sudden now you get 95, if not 100%, to figure out your schedule. So I know that's off topic.
So you said, okay, I'm getting 50% of what the value I'm providing.
Right.
That's kind of bull jive.
It is. Not to
So that was your hit the exit button.
Hit the exit, but then when I started looking back at the macro, it tied into it, right? Because we saw where businesses are going. Big companies are struggling with digital. Their solution is just lay off people, right? We're going to lay off people. We'll hit our number. I used to joke, and I still dead serious, that if you're $1 billion company, I could probably go in there and find 10% in SG&A expense.
For sure.
Tomorrow, not even knowing what the company's, just the way that they're built. And so the more I got into it, the more I wanted to help small businesses start to figure out, all right, how do we take on these companies? We can build these. And so the next natural, or the backbone, I think, of where this is all going is fractional, right?
Did you see that? Whoa, hey, this thing works. Did you see fractional at the time?
I didn't even know what fractional was at the time, right? So, but it made sense. It was from a consulting standpoint and part-time helping these companies. And then I think it was when I met you was the first time I actually heard the term fractional, but then it was starting to pop up in small and some mid-sized businesses. And back to your original question was on the macro side, I think it's where the future of business is going, right? By 2027, it's projected that there'll be more, I'll call them solo businesses, than there will be employees. Right? So freelancers, government likes to call them freelancers, but we're all our own businesses. So even if you're doing it part-time or full-time, there's going to be more of us than there will be employees. But yet none of the ecosystem is built to support this. So that's when I really started to embrace and say, how do we get more people on both sides, right? The people get the hell out of corporate, but give them a plan, right?
Place to go.
Exactly.
A place to go. Karina, why the exodus?
I think it's a perfect storm. COVID made people realize there is a different way. And then people are getting let go, so they're being forced to find a different way. And, I worked remotely for years, but for people who for the first time had that flexibility and freedom and they could do their job better at home, why would they just go back? So there's just all these things happening, and people feel like, life is too precious. We all were brutally awoken to that, right? How many people died from COVID? Like, why would I just go back to what was when I know there is something better? And this is one of the betters.
A little bit of an awakening.
Yeah.
Which continues. Heather?
Yeah, I concur with both of my panelists. What I would add is that COVID lowered the water level. in a lot of companies and a lot of big corporations. And what I mean by that is the culture, what was tolerated behaviors, the gap in foundational leadership skills, much less the skills to be able to lead hybrid or remote workers and teams when the illusion of control is no longer. And so it lowered the water level. And, when you can kind of see when the sludge becomes really visible, you're like, yeah, I'm not buying it. And life is too precious to continue doing it. And unfortunately, a lot of large corporations, the ship is just too big to really transform a culture, which is why I work with small and mid-sized businesses.
Job security for you.
Yeah. But also, and I just was having a conversation on the break with someone that, their spouse had not thought about fractional, but because of the behaviors of the leaders and they're tolerated within corporations, they're going, there must be a better way. And so they're looking at fractional. And I think those gaps, they're too big in large corporations that people are just like, I don't need to do that anymore. Yeah. And I'm going to go out on my own. And I've got a lot of expertise. I like actually doing and making the impact, which is what makes fractional so much more compelling than consulting.
Yeah. So lowering the water level, just to stay with that for a minute, the way I take that is there was some stuff that we didn't see. Is that what we're getting at?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or we saw it, but
kind of normalized it.
Normalized it.
Or something like that. Maybe all three of you could contribute on this. I think one thing, which I write about in Revolt, that's the only pitch you're going to hear me say about my book, but which I write about in Revolt is one of the things that we just normalized was toxicity. It was like normal, like just, people get to be assholes and jerks and leaders don't have to really lead. I think the water line came low really quickly on that, and we realized, we said that was okay? That's one thing I saw. What else came underneath the water line in that moment? And obviously it's still there. We're still seeing it. I'm going to go to you.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with that, where you never choose your coworkers, right? You have to coexist, but one of the policies that I have with my company of one is no asshole policy, right? My life is so much better not having to work with people, either customers or vendors or even networking calls. I mean, that's the one requirement is no assholes, and I'll talk to anybody, right? But the quality of life is dramatically improved by just cutting that
So
crap
just
out.
almost from mental health.
Mental, 100%.
Yeah. Karina?
So we had a conversation in Fractionals United in the early days about the difference of how CEOs treat us as W-2 versus fractional. And as a fractional, we're treated as a true partner. They value our expertise. They don't feel like they own us. And I had actually gone full-time with a fractional, and others have gone in and out. And there's this subtle shift that once you become full-time W-2, they own you, and they no longer respect you.
Ooh. That's a
It
big
was
deal.
very subtle, and only when others are like, yeah, I saw that, did I, in hindsight, see it. So I think that, we just, I was W-2 up until 8 years ago, and you just, okay, I can't make a difference past a certain point, and I can't say this because it's not going to be accepted, and I just have to just get through the day, but you don't. There's a better way, and being fractional means that A, you can walk away, or B, you actually have a voice, a true voice, because you are treated as a partner.
So the water line came down, and we saw toxicity, we saw assholes, and we saw disrespect. Yep. Fucking yikes, right? But we normalized that.
Yeah, one other thing we normalized is one-way loyalty. That, companies wanted loyalty. So that meant we were taking the laptops on vacation. We were missing out on the kids' soccer games. We were logging on later at night because we had a global team. And so I'll do my day job and do that too. Yeah. So that's what loyalty meant. But as soon as push came to shove and the layoffs happen or the market crashes, and so your 401k is no longer, so viable. Yeah. So that's where millennials and Gen Z looked at that and went, yeah, I'm not buying it. And I'll say I'm a young Gen X, and I woke up and I go, and I've been buying it too long.
Yeah.
So I think that tolerating one-way loyalty, and in a way, like with Fractional, there's no illusion. There's no illusion about it. It is we're in a partnership, and I think there's more transparency and I don't know. It's the very nature of the relationship is transparent to both parties and equitable to both parties. So there's a bit more, because I'm not going to lie, I worked hard in corporate, and I work even harder now, but it doesn't drain me in the same way, and it's entirely by choice.
Isn't that something? Like the same 10 hours you might work today is a different 10 hours maybe 10 years ago. But it's still 10 hours.
And to add on that, they actually expect you to call them, well, the good ones expect you to call them on their BS as a fractional, because they want that. They want you to be that objective partner that points out the things they don't know. Whereas as an employee, they're like, just shut up and do what I tell you to do. Do your job.
Yeah. Which isn't, I think leaders are learning a lot about themselves in this moment, like, whoa, we were a little bit behind the curtain a little bit and led in a certain way, and the water line did come down, and we have to change too. Which, quite honestly, I look at this as a wonderful opportunity for us all to change and evolve and be successful and prosperous, but we want the businesses to do great too. We absolutely do. So we're learning about ourselves, and hopefully they're learning as well. Okay, so we've covered Exodus, and all the water line came down and all the things that drove us away from, but let's talk about going to. Karina, I think I'm going to start with you on this one. I checked LinkedIn the day before yesterday, and on LinkedIn there are 72,000 people who self-identify as some version of a fractional pro. And we study this, Jason and I study this. I think last year, early in the year, that number was less than 2,000. So I don't know what the math on the percentage growth is there, but from 2,000 to 70,000 is a pretty big number. People are moving into this space. There's a law of attraction happening. Karina, could you start with that? Your thoughts?
So back to the perfect storm. There were always people doing fractional work, although it didn't have a name. It now has a name. People are in this transition, want something different. They hear about it. Oh my God, this sounds perfect. They want to do this. There are actually some big media articles. So it's just, it's a trend. Mm-hmm. And the more we talk about it, the more people write about it, the more people want it, because it makes sense. It's a win-win. So that you're just going to see more and more of that happening, because it solves the problem for both sides.
Yeah. I use this tool called Recon G2, and it gives I just dial in the cards to give me data, and I found out that sometime in the last few months, right behind AI from a curiosity search term was fractional.
Right.
Yeah. So it's happening, right? Heather, your thoughts on there's 70,000 people saying I'm doing this now, and if it's 70,000 this year, I'm guessing 140 and exponential growth here.
Yeah. I'm going to pick up on the perfect storm. There's the storms happening, within corporate America, which we've touched on. There's storms happening from a multi-generational workforce perspective. For the first time, we have 5 generations in the workforce. And we've got older 2 generations, unfortunately, saw one, we're living longer. Yeah. And we got some knowledge and experience to share, and we still want to make an impact. And unfortunately, have seen 401ks wiped out in 2008 and again, in 2020. So sometimes they need to work longer. Yeah. So that's one end of it. And then you have millennials, the largest generation we've ever seen in the US, combined with Gen Z. And like I said, they're not buying into the idea of loyalty and having this one job. They're already sort of patching together their work experiences. And over 50, so Gen Z is 25 and younger. And over 50% of them have already started a business or a side hustle. 50%
of Gen Z.
Of Gen Z. That's 15
good for
to
them.
25. Yeah, it is good for them. So they're like, I'm going to do my own thing, and so I think that is another thing that adds to this perfect storm. Going, maybe there's not just this one path. There's
one job, one salary,
one job,
person.
one salary, one lane. Maybe I can craft multiple lanes.
And maybe we should.
And maybe you should.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go with the Gen X piece of this, right?
Of course you
Because-
are. You heard my walk-up music, Journey.
Yes, you did. That
This
was
is so good for
perfect.
Gen X, by the way.
Yeah. But when you think about it, it makes sense. I actually wrote about this not that long ago, but when you think about, I grew up as a latchkey kid. You know, we overgeneralize. Came home to an empty house in
Everybody else
fourth
latchkey.
grade. Summers were literally be home before dark.
Mm-hmm.
And two things, don't seriously hurt anybody.
Or
don't
burn
hurt
anything down.
yourself, and make it home, right? And so it was a lot of independence. It was a lot of freedom. We had to make our own choices. Then if anybody's like me, we go to corporate for 30 years and we slowly get into this box and we don't make choices anymore. We just need to keep the status quo and we keep it moving in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, at least I got to the point, I'm like, there's got to be more, right? Is this it?
Yep.
Am I going to work in corporate until I'm 70? Because
Yeah.
one, that never was going to happen. But two,
Right.
what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And so we've got generations of experience, 2-3 decades. We lived and managed through, 3 technology evolutions, right?
At least.
Internet, mobile, now we've got AI, so we're comfortable leading from that. And we've got the experience that all of these companies need. So I think it just makes sense.
And Gen X is also the first generation to be caretaking both the generations before them and the generations after them. So the flexibility
Yeah.
of Fractional is really vital to just, home life.
And we have financial demands above us and below us, so that we're staying longer. Somebody not too long ago told me a story. It's kind of a while ago, but they said they were always wanted to work for General Mills here in town, great company and all that stuff. But they're like, yeah, just think about it, working for like Cheerios and all these brands. And then after a while, years later, he said, well, it was the worst job ever. And I said, why? You wanted to work on Cheerios, the little bee and the nuts and the honey and the commercials and the box. It's like, you go in and the modus operandi is don't fuck around, don't screw it up. And so the opportunity to be creative and innovative and use the full swath of our gifts is often limited in corporate. And that doesn't make corporate good or bad. It's just good to recognize those are that's there. And I thought that was compelling. And so to go into a place like you guys are talking about that's different, of opportunity and fulfillment, and use these tools we've amassed, not let them sit in a box from college to cubicle is not necessarily a good path.
I would say that Fractional has something for every generation. Whether you're starting out and you're not sure what you want to be, so you want to do a couple of things, to your midlife, having kids, you want to spend time, seeing raising and seeing your kids grow up, to near retirement, but still either want to make the money or want to, do something impactful. It's got something for every generation.
I didn't know that going in. Like your point about the Gen Z, I'm like, well, this is for those of us that are older. I'm 55. It's really great because to amass wisdom, right, takes some time. But the people behind us are looking at this as the normal because they're not doing any of that other stuff. Heather, for you, people, leadership, and culture. I can't think of a single time in America when all of that I know you deal with all the time has had such immense moment of change. It's kind of like at one point we had the dial-up and then we had the internet. Change is just boom. At one point we were a horse-based country and then all of a sudden the car. And from a leadership standpoint, we're at that much level of change. More data. As of September, occupancy rates of offices was less than half of pre-pandemic levels. We ain't going back. And so it's not about COVID being over. This is something else. What's going on here?
Yeah, it's number of things. So it's interesting when you, the Wall Street Journal, you commented go back to the office. And yet then there was another study that came out at the same time that CEOs of major Fortune 500 secretly fully expect hybrid and flexible work to continue to grow. So
They just
it's
don't say it out loud?
And then there's the reality of it. I think it also, that one, it comes back to flexibility and people wanting the flexibility and needing that flexibility. I think Gen X, we didn't have the numbers to sort of force that catalyst, but millennials, 26 to 40 are the numbers. They have the numbers to start to force that. That's why people are struggling to keep and retain talent. And
When you say force, you mean dictate that choice?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, okay. Yep.
Because millennials are like, I'm not buying it. And two of the top questions that get asked by candidates, and I talk with executive recruiters and recruiters all the time, is one about flexible work, and then secondly is about the culture. And what's super interesting to me is employee engagement is a buzzword that's been around since the 80s. And yet, with all of our knowledge, with all of our everything, employee engagement has basically remained stagnant in the United States since the 80s. So we know a lot more, we just don't do any better. The one exception to that was the first 3 months of the pandemic. That's the only time it's peaked, and then, don't worry, it went back.
Yeah.
But the reason is 3 things happened. One, companies actually demonstrated they cared for employees because they took the, no, you can't work from home, to overnight, we need you to work from home. And we'll figure out a way to do that so that we can stay open and operate. So they demonstrated a care for employees, they over-communicated, and leaders for the first time had to admit they didn't know what the hell was going on or what to do. And that sort of vulnerability and authenticity is actually what all of us have been craving in the workplace for so long. And so we saw for about 4 or 5 months, employee engagement actually increase at the start of the pandemic.
During the pandemic.
And then by September, October, as we started settling into a new normal, we went back to our old ways. But I think getting that taste of it, culture really resonated in how we work. It stuck with people, and they're going, if the company isn't really going to evolve and change, and probably depending upon the size, the leadership, it may not, then I'm going to make a choice for myself that offers me what I've been wanting and needing, and the circumstances under which I can best thrive and best contribute.
That's some big time stuff that we're entering into, a major tectonic plate shift. Before I go to the next question, do you have anything to add to that?
Just to maybe follow up on that, the leadership piece of it, because the analogy I use with folks a lot, at least I see it, is think of a big blockbuster movie, right? You got hair, you got makeup, you got script, you got actors. All are independent or small companies, right? But yet somebody's got to lead and put that whole production together to get it out the door on time. I just think that's where we're heading. If 50% of your company's employee and 50% are fractional or some part-time, the way you lead in employee engagement, I'm not sure I know what that looks like. That's probably your domain. But
talk to Heather about that.
It's just going to look different. So I think if we approach it, more people are going to be happy, right?
Yeah. It's definitely, we're seeing that shift to, it's outcomes based. Like when you're making a film, everyone's there, they want to make the best film, they understand the genre of the film, they discuss the contributions of all the small businesses, so it's united behind a vision. But because it all is small businesses, it's not command and control, it's not just shut up and do your job and do what I say, it's much more collaborative and dialogue, and it's outcomes based. And then trusting the experts within each of those small businesses or each of those areas of expertise to deliver that in service of the larger goal. That is a completely different leadership model than what most of us, or at least me, what I grew up with in corporate. And because most leaders never get any support or training in foundational people skills, the way they've developed their leadership is by modeling on what they saw before. And that has not worked very well, and especially as we have this tectonic shift and unprecedented circumstances, that's where I say the sludge has shown, the water level is lowered.
Right.
Because they don't, a lot of leaders they haven't had to demonstrate a growth mindset to examine their own leadership.
Yeah.
And they don't know what it means to lead in a collaborative outcomes-based as opposed to let me monitor your output and make sure you're at your desk.
So my business partner, Jason, talks about this a lot. He's a historian on economics and all these wonderful things. And he gives me like the big picture, and I'll say something small and little. I'm like, I'm seeing this, Jason. He goes, well, but he said this recently. He said, well, John, all of this is just a leftover from the Industrial Revolution norms. And he's right. Like, if the Industrial Revolution said, treat everybody just like you treat the person on the line to move the wheels down the line at Ford Motor, or it's all just sort of remnants of that. Okay, not awesome. We're thinkers, not doers, but we're moving to a different place of self-realization. Karina, I'd like you to talk about this. What are people like? Talk about that, like people moving into a place of democratization, self-realization, like building it on their own shoulders. What are you seeing?
So, because most fractionals are experienced leaders, they know their worth. They want freedom. They want options. I said it earlier today. I remember the first time I said no to a client. It was scary, but so liberating and a milestone. And I am very selective. I ask as many questions. Like, I don't treat fractional work as, it's not consulting. I don't do a proposal. I don't pitch. It's a two-way interview. And I ask as many questions of my potential CEO as they ask of me, because I want to make sure they're going to trust me and allow me to do the work that they're hiring me to do. They're going to treat me like a true partner. And if that's not there, and yes, there are times you have to take the work because you have bills to pay. But unless you're in that dire strait, if that's not there, I walk away. Because I know what I am worth, I know what I can bring, but I also know that I can't do it if they can get out of my way. And so I'm rereading Peak by Chip Heath. I'm
Sounds right.
Chip Conley, whatever.
Chip Conley.
Yeah,
Chip Conley.
The
Yep.
Maslow hierarchy, right?
Mm-hmm.
As fractionals, we can self-actualize, right? Like, on the bottom, you need money and safety, and then you need belonging, and I forget one step, sorry. But on the top is self-actualization, where you are your best. And we can be our best as fractionals, because we can decide, you know what? I want to spend 50% of my time as a fractional, and then I have this side idea. I want to be a founder, or I want to be a consultant, or I want to be a musician. Whatever you need to be your best person, best self, you can do, because you're in control.
Yeah, that gets me motivated. I tried to pick up guitar once. Musician's not in the cards, but it's something I want to unpack a little bit more. With these people going for self-actualization and people hiring people that think that way, there's a part of our economy that we don't read about on CNBC and see on CNN all the time, the small business side, that really stands to benefit. They're a little later in adopting, but the economic benefits, the wisdom benefits, all the benefits are really, really there. I'm not going to ask you to have a crystal ball, but actually I am. It's coming, right? They're already here, but talk about when do you think that's going to turn, where that part of the economy says, okay, I'm doing this fractional thing in earnest now, or do you think we're already there?
Again, we're probably in a bubble
where
we see more of it, but I think it's definitely coming. Because, like I said, I came across, and I didn't know you at the point. It didn't have a name, but that movement, it's been happening. And I think it was Tara who mentioned earlier during her presentation about finding your why. The one I always encourage people is, what do you really want? And it's not just, if it's money, 100% money, good for you, go get it. This is what your plan looks like. But if it's your what do you want is to spend 2 days every week not doing anything, or I worked with a former corporate coworker.
Yeah.
She started her own company, and her whole mission was, I want to take the month of August so I can go climbing.
I love that.
End of story. And so she was able to define her why. And so I think the more and more we're starting to do that, and actually think, shit, we can actually do that.
We can.
Right. So I think that's
we didn't
why
think we could because of the Industrial Revolution said you can't.
Right.
Get back on the line.
Back into the corporate.
Yeah. Heather.
So funny. I feel like my aspirations are too low because I just wanted to eat breakfast in the morning. And that sounds so crazy, but I had so many early morning calls in the office with an international team that I stopped eating breakfast. So my number one goal was to have a life where I could eat breakfast.
Just simple.
I now need to pick up an instrument or something.
What's the next major hurdle? Lunch.
Yeah. I do. I think we're actually at the beginning of that cusp.
Okay.
And I do think that the acceptance of it, of companies to hire fractional, I think private equity and investment groups
They're
are
early.
really getting in on this because they're like, wait a second, so I can have this one expert and deploy them to several of my companies that not only protects my investment, but drives my investment. So I think that is starting to help it, but I also think the massive numbers of the millennials and the fact that they're already doing the side hustle and all that, I think that, we're at the beginning of the cusp and the wave of it happening. And so we're all innovators.
Yeah, well, it's funny because the news drives a lot of this, right? And the news has its eye on the millennials. It had its eye on the boomers, and now it has its eye on the millennials and what they're up to. They're probably going to talk about a lot. Karina, any thoughts on that?
So first of all, we're not widgets.
We're not widgets.
Repeat
It's
that
true.
10 times. We're not widgets, and this gives us the control that we didn't have as W2. And I think it's just, so there is still a current problem that there is, it's the elephant in the room, right? There is a lot more supply than demand.
Currently, yep.
And we need to, collectively work together to inform and educate more the SMBs and startups and scale-ups that fractional exists. And I truly believe that once more of them know, because it's such an obvious, getting the work and keeping the work and finding more work will all be easier. It is hard now. The only way to really find the work now is through networking and business development and referral systems and just making connections with fractionals that are adjacent to you functionally or industry-wise. It's hard. It's hard now. It will not be hard once a larger fraction of the people who need us know we exist. And that's going to take time.
And just has the agency to find it. Yeah, Heather.
Because 2020, there was an unprecedented number of businesses started that year.
Yeah.
So they're just in year 3 of business, and I happen to have one of those. Yeah. But what was interesting is, Goldman Sachs has their small businesses program. And for the first time, I was talking to the growth coaches, and they're like, as people, and these are small businesses focused on rapid, extensive growth. And the growth coach said, for the first time this year, there was discussion in the growth plans about fractional hires to scale the growth. He's like, that didn't come up before because I put that in my growth plan because I happen to be well connected with the community. And it was a comment that he made that it's the first time this is really coming up in conversation, fueling the growth plan. So what you're saying, yes, that's where we are now, but the seed is planted.
Yeah, or the box has been opened.
Yeah.
Right, and you can't close it. And that was on Goldman Sachs?
Yeah, the Goldman Sachs Small Businesses Program. And the whole thing is about building a growth plan. And it was just interesting to me that the growth coach said, this is the first time that the talk of fractionals as enabling your scale and your growth.
That's so funny because what you said earlier, because Goldman Sachs says, get your asses back into the office.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, wait a minute, go fractional instead. Yeah. Well, we are at a time of change. I mean, and it's massive. And sometimes, when it's so big, right, how do you deal with it? How do you deal with it? So for each of you, I have a specific question. I'll start with Karina. You all see fractional as a thing. And over time, it'll become a universal thing with a clear definition, but whatever. Karina, where are you focused on the advancement of fractional and why?
So my focus is community, Fractionals United. I built it because when I came back after going full-time, the landscape was different and harder, and I needed that community. It's a free community to connect, collaborate, and learn from each other. Because as I said, that is the only way you can find the work. But also, it's still new. We're not, we're fully embedded members of the team, but because we're remote and part-time, there isn't that water cooler. We're not consultants. So I wanted this, I needed this, I built it. And because we've grown so quickly, it just goes to show I'm not the only one who needs this community.
Right.
We want it.
5,000 members as of last week.
As of yesterday.
As of yesterday, yeah. So that's telling, right?
Yeah.
That's there aren't the water coolers that used to be, and quite honestly, these are new water coolers.
Yep.
So community is an important thing. Brett, where are you focused on the advancement of fractional and why?
Yeah, I mean, if you didn't get the sense, I focus a lot of my time with the Gen X corporate escapees, mostly with folks that have had successful careers, either management consulting or in corporate, and say, hey, how do we start to make a difference outside of it? And I 100% believe fractional is the backbone because it's
Right.
the easiest path in to leverage our expertise. But on the back side of that is, my 30 years of network is still in B2B, right, at
Okay.
different levels. And so just starting to introduce the concept of fractional, and by the way, there's a revenue stream back,
Yes.
right? To say, hey, you're struggling with this, man, we've got folks that can plug into this organization. You don't have to hire 15 people, you get ahead. So, long-winded answer to say from both sides, most of it's coming from the supply side,
Yeah.
but starting to make some inroads at some bigger companies on the
You were telling me earlier about you used a great word, I'm going to mess it up, but a collaboration, a bunch of people, resources behind fractionals. What did you freaking call that again?
it was collaboration.
A collaboration.
Ideation
Okay.
and collaboration.
Ideation and collaboration. Okay, so that's what you see. That's, as my friend Liz would say, she goes, all this new stuff needs scaffolding underneath it.
Yeah.
So you see community as a big part of scaffolding. You see collaboration as part of scaffolding. Very nice. Heather?
My focus is really on, because I focus on small and mid-sized businesses.
Yep.
And I just really believe our workplaces don't have to be how most of us grew up in them and why most of us made the exodus. So my focus is on cultivating leaders who, one, understand what culture really is. They know they're tasked to lead it, but ask them to define it, and most of them can't. And then secondly, developing that growth mindset, developing that outcomes-based leadership, that more collaborative, people-centric leadership style. Because if we start cultivating that in our workplaces, then, because fractional is not going to be for everyone.
No.
But that gives a place that all of us deserve environments where we can thrive. And the key to that, because I work with small and mid-sized businesses, is I see some of those gaps. And so connecting them with fractionals, with leaders I know can help cultivate those workplaces is a way for them to then plant those seeds, supported, of course, by all that we provide. So we really do create those workplaces.
So as you help your clients develop more nurturing, healthy places, you see fractionals as contributors to that, just
Absolutely.
Inherently. And it's
Yes.
not just because we're all John Hughes fans,
Exactly.
although that's a major contributing factor.
Exactly.
Does everybody know when I say John Hughes? Oh, thank you. Thank God. Gen X, yeah.
Fractionals can play a huge role, and as I talk to leaders about evolving their cultures, fractionals can play a huge role in that. It's like this outside breath and perspective of fresh air that can say, yeah, I know that's the way you've always done it. It doesn't have to be that way, and can actually demonstrate it in their environment, in their industry, in their workplace. So I see fractionals as a key to that.
Beautiful.
Just to add to that, so I read a lot of books, so apologies that I'm
You need to
bringing up
have a
another
book club.
book. One of my favorite leadership books is Multipliers by Liz Weissman, and I truly believe that fractionals have to be multipliers just to be successful. So the whole concept is there are leaders that are multipliers and diminishers. The diminishers are the ones who have to be the center of attention. They suck out all the motivation and air, from a room in a company, whereas multipliers support and enable and know that their job is to enable the success of those who report to them. So fractionals, by definition, because we are part-time, because we need to know how to make the best of the resources that are reporting to us, have to be multipliers to be successful. So we have to be good leaders.
Is the, in your experience for you three, is the experience between the hiring side and the fractional, does it lean more towards the transactional or does it lean more towards the emotional? Or relational, thank you, that's a better term. See, you get a lawyer in the room and all of a sudden they got all the nomenclature. Okay, got it. I'll start with Brett on that one.
Maybe, can you
So someone's going to hire you.
Yes.
Now,
is it
transactionally, right? Like, I get Brett, and he's not $250,000 a year because he's going to cost less. That's transactional. There's value there, but then you're there.
I think it's hybrid. I'd say it's a little bit of everything, right? They still need to have the results. There's a transaction that's going to take place. But one of the things that surprised me over the last couple of years, when my first fractional deal, it was time. How many hours are you working this month, and what days are you going to be there?
Yeah.
But now I'm almost, and you guys see a lot more than I do, probably. There's almost an industry standard being set for fractional, at least for chief revenue officers, that the expectation is kind of a day a week. We're not tracking exact hours. You're going to set the outcomes each month, and which when I tell people that are still in corporate, they're like, really? I'm like, yes. So it's morphing quickly
into
so,
that relational.
Yeah.
Heather?
I would agree. I think it's a mix, and sometimes things can start transactional and then they really realize the value, and so it moves strategic very quickly. Sometimes the transactional is your access point,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's all they can see. I have this thing that needs to be solved, and
Yeah.
so you go, well, I can do that, and by the way, I can do so much more.
Yeah.
So I see it working both
Ways, yeah. Karina, you get 1 second at this, and then we're getting the shepherd's hook from our voice of God.
So I would say it's hybrid, but it also depends on your function. For me as a fractional COO, I'd say it leans a little bit more towards relational, because that CEO-COO relationship,
Yep.
like we need to be like so like aligned and like almost like a married couple. You know what I mean? So it has to be, there has to be that trust and relationship first.
Yeah, huge. I wish we had several more hours, because we could certainly go forever. But hey, thank you, everybody. You guys have done a lot of education here, and because you see it from a great place. So, and thank you, everybody, for watching us and sharing. Let's hear a round of applause for our wonderful folks here. Thank you, guys. Thank you. You want this thing?
So good, so informative. How about another big round of applause for these folks up here? We can let them take leave of the stage. Thank you very, very much. I appreciate all of you. All right, so for you sitting out there, you are in the right spot, because the Hives, which is this really cool concept that CoLab has, you're going to be connecting with other professionals here, is going to be starting right here in about 15 minutes. So the distance you can go is over there, where they are. All right, but then you got to come back here, because they'll be coming back here. Also, I want you for your evening plans, okay? Evening plans. Right after Hives, it'll be 5 o'clock, and that's when we'll go back to the Brewer's Den, and there will be beer and snacks and heavy hors d'oeuvres, okay? So beer will begin to be served in Cash Bar there. At 5:15, 5:30-ish in the Brewer's Den, we're going to have Heather Boschke. She's going to be talking about to frack or not to frack. She's going to be doing further insights into fracking. And then after dinner tonight, if you're hanging around downtown, you're going to be down here, make the most of this. There is going to be a networking meeting for Fractional United. It's an organization that together that's just for connecting other fractional professionals, and that's going to be downstairs around 7 o'clock at the tap room at the very bottom. Okay, so that is your evening plans. Enjoy, have a good time, and we'll be starting in about 15 minutes here with the Hives. Thanks for coming.